I used to be a man, Douglas.
I'm a dude.
Hello, John.
And there's Daddy.
MTF 트랜스젠더예요. 근데 원하는 만큼 아직 성확정 수술을 마치지 못해서 그 비용을 마련하고 나중에 태국에 거주를 하기 위해서 이 게임장 안으로 들어온 인물입니다.
Transgender representation in media can be complicated. It's been almost a decade since Tom Hooper's The Danish Girl came out and established that anyone who's not trans playing a trans character is just as good Oscar bait as playing a disabled person, both of which Eddie Redmayne did within just a year. The thing is though, there are tons of trans actors and disabled actors that struggle to find work. And what's more, the authenticity that someone from that lived experience can bring to a role cannot really be understated. But trans representation can be complicated. Sometimes the stigma of being a big-name trans actor, possibly making yourself the most famous trans actor or even most famous trans person in your country, might make authentic trans representation, and you being that representation, a bit problematic. Even dangerous. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try, but I think it does bear remembering how many more openly trans actors there are in, say, America or the UK, where many of the big movies that use trans stories as Oscar fodder for cis actors are made, rather than in Korea. Then again, a quick Google search of Korean trans actors will bring up multiple examples of openly transgender actors in South Korea, so how hard can it be really? And why am I bringing this up at all? Well, Squid Game Season 2 just came out, and it heavily features a trans woman character, played by a cisgender male actor. And I have feelings about this. And not necessarily the feelings that you might expect. Also, I've spent the last week and a half bedridden with the worst cold of my life. It's not COVID, I've been tested. So we're starting off the year with something that doesn't involve me doing a deep dive into something horrific or dystopian. Well, actually, this is about trans representation in Squid Game, so I suppose it does involve something dystopian. Either way, let me tell you why I love the transgender character in Squid Game, and why I have genuinely mixed feelings about that, and the decision to cast a cis male actor to play the role.
이 게임 참가자들 중에서 보기 드물게 좀 정의로움을 가지고 있고 내면의 단단함도 품고 있고 굉장히 인간적인 캐릭터라고 볼 수 있을 것 같습니다.
Rest assured, however, dear viewers, that the role of me, Bridget Empire, will be played by me, Bridget Empire. That's right, I am honoured to be a trans actor playing a trans character in my own YouTube show, and in my capacity as science and culture correspondent for the Daily Telegraph, the only British newspaper that was there for the consolidation of power in Korea by the Koryo dynasty, and thus the only newspaper whose editorial staff just don't know about the whole Korean War thing. It'd break Dan's heart to find out that the peninsula has been split into 2 different countries now, and if I tell him, I'll have to explain to him what Juche is, and no one wants to do that. Thankfully, it's not necessary to know anything about Juche or even much about the political system of South Korea to watch Squid Game. Although if you've never heard of capitalism before, you might be a little bit confused. You see, Squid Game is a South Korean dystopian TV show by Hwang Dong-hyuk that had its first season released on Netflix in 2021. Now, I say first season, but the first season was very self-contained, and the fact that Netflix insisted on more seasons because the show is printing money despite the obvious anti-capitalist message just goes to show that Mark Fisher was right about how capitalism subsumes all critiques of itself and reproduces them as commodities. Or in the words of my girl Joyce Messier in Disco Elysium,
I can't. That's how simple it is. One may dye their hair green and wear their grandma's coat all they want. Capital has the ability to subsume all critiques into itself. Even those who would critique capital end up reinforcing it instead.
Regardless of however much Squid Game ends up reinforcing capital, however, it is a pretty straightforward critique of capitalism in South Korea, with desperate people loaded with debt coerced into playing children's games that murder you. There's even an extended critique of how electoralism and capitalism only further entrenches the violence of the system that is even more obvious and played up in Season 2. Speaking of Season 2, the second and third seasons of Squid Game are essentially parts 1 and 2 of the sequel to Season 1, and it is in this sequel that we are introduced to our trans character, former army sergeant turned social and familial outcast Hyun-ju, played by cisgender male actor Park Sung-hoon.
We're more than capable of not only telling our own stories, but telling stories in general.
If this is a way to challenge yourself as an actor, then I think you should let us challenge and play some cis roles. We've been asking for it for a very long time. And if someone can do that and play our roles, then I think it should be allotted to us to play the roles that we know we're more comfortable with as well.
I mean, what is a cis role? You know what I mean? Like what we are conceptualizing as cis roles is like just somebody playing a role and telling a story that has nothing to do with their gender being dissected.
For the longest time, trans stories have been made as a sort of outsider spectacle. Less of a vehicle to tell our stories, and more of a vehicle for cis people to go, look at those freaks, and then demand they get prestigious awards and accolades for having the revolutionary idea that we are real people with feelings and inner lives that maybe shouldn't just be the butt of a joke or exclusively cast in the role of dead hooker. The only trans representation I remember in media growing up was, well, the butt of every joke in How I Met Your Mother.
I used to be a dude.
Or as an object of disgust, which was also the butt of every joke. Whether it be Chandler's dad from Friends, which is a whole video in and of itself.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Mr. Bing.
Mrs. Garrison on South Park, which made it clear that not only were we the butt of a joke, but we were disgusting freaks who deserved to be laughed at. Every joke in Family Guy, which inevitably ended up in characters finding out they'd accidentally kissed a trans woman only to throw up for 20 whole minutes of screen time. Or if it were an actual trans person on TV, it was probably Nadia from Big Brother, who was pretty well accepted at the time. How things change. Unfortunately for me, I didn't watch Big Brother, so the closest I got to seeing trans people on TV were either punchlines or seeing Lily Savage and not realizing the difference between a drag queen and a trans woman. I really liked Lily Savage though, no shade. The one thing that I'll give the horrible mess that is the Chandler's dad story on Friends is that Helena is played by a cis woman, as is the trans girlfriend of Matt Berry's character on the IT Crowd, despite how horribly written both of these characters are. Although, ironically, given how much worse a transphobe Graham Linehan is now than any of the writers of Friends, Friends handled this a lot worse. The most harmful depictions of trans women on TV were those that were played by a cis man, usually barely playing dress-up. These are the portrayals that have informed the way many bigots think of us, from your dad to J.K. Rowling. Anyone who's never sat down and talked to a trans woman, or at least never seen one online or read about us, well, there's a high chance they probably think we're just men in a wig and a dress, because that's what they've seen on TV. And despite me desperately wanting to have faith in humanity, there are a lot of people who just believe everything they see on TV sitcoms wholesale, without thinking that perhaps TV isn't real life, and that trans women might, be women. And if they won't concede that, then at least we aren't the way we're shown on TV when played by cis men, that is, coming home at the end of the day, taking off our costume and returning to being a man, because that's the implication. When I'm at home, being a slob on the couch, I'm still a woman. But you probably wouldn't get that from the way trans people are written by cis writers, or the way they're played by cis actors.
My issue with cisgender men playing trans women, what it does is it perpetuates a stereotype that at the end of the day, I take this off. That somehow I'm not a woman because that's what these men do. They put it on and play a character, and then they're given an award, but with a beard. And people think, oh, that's what trans is.
Once upon a time, this might have been a little more understandable. Being trans out in the open was pretty rare. Those who had transitioned medically often did it with the aim of eventually going stealth. Not out of desire necessarily, but out of necessity, for their own safety. As bad as things are now for trans people, and as loud as our enemies are, we have more allies, and more people willing to fight for us than ever. These days, if you cast a trans woman character, at least in the West, there is no excuse not to cast a trans woman in the role. And the same goes for trans man and non-binary roles. Many of us are out. Many of us are actors even. You only have to look as far as your YouTube recommendations tab after you've done watching this to see transgender actor Abigail Thorne, aka Philosophy Tube, and heck, I've done acting before, and I love voice acting, so if you're looking for trans actors and you're having trouble, put me in, coach! In fact, trans people are making our own stories now, and nothing stands out in that category more than Jane Schoenbrun's I Saw the TV Glow, a brutally existential movie that captures the feeling of gender dysphoria better than anything I've ever seen out of my own struggles with the feeling. And it's made by a trans person, that's huge! Compared to that, movies like The Danish Girl or the bafflingly tone-deaf, racist, transphobic mess that just won an award for some fucking reason, Amelia Perez, seem like ridiculous caricatures.
Penis to vagina.
They lack the lived experience of trans people, the input from people whose lives they seek to portray, and they lack the depth to genuinely tell a good story beyond, ooh, aren't trans people weird?
Penis to vagina.
Squid Game is not that. I think it genuinely does a great job, and this might be in part due to the fact that its trans character's transition is not the entire focus of the story. So what parts we get off her are short, they're to the point, they're character building. Every time she's on screen, it has an impact. And importantly, actual trans people were apparently consulted, which helps. But still, it uses a cis actor. Many of the articles I read about this decision highlighted clips from the Netflix documentary Disclosure about trans representation in media and the issues therein. It's an incredible documentary which I highly recommend, and I stuck a clip from it in here earlier, but the most pertinent section to this discussion is a part of an interview with trans actor Jen Richards, included in the Capital FM article on Squid Game Season 2, among others, so credit to them and to Disclosure for this essential point.
Having cis men play trans women, in my mind, is a direct link to the violence against trans women. And in my mind, part of the reason that men end up killing trans women out of fear that other men will think that they're gay for having been with trans women is that the friends, the men whose judgment they're fear of, only know trans women from media, and the people who are playing trans women are the men that they know. This doesn't happen when a trans woman plays a trans woman. Laverne Cox is just as beautiful and glamorous off-screen as she is on-screen, as is Jasmine, as is Trace Lysette, and Alexandra Billings, and Angelica Ross, and so on. When you see these women off-screen still as women, it completely deflates this idea that they're somehow men in disguise.
Penis to vagina.
The thing is, though, as far as we've come with trans media in, say, the USA, Canada, the UK, and parts of Europe, much of the world remains incredibly socially conservative. Even places that have made great progress in the past. We've seen the way the sliver of trans acceptance we managed to eke out in the West has been met by horrible backlash in America and the UK and beyond, with every major party and most mainstream media champing at the bit to throw trans people under the bus at the very first opportunity. So even though there are trans women actors in Korea, it is possible that with the current climate the way it is, finding someone to star openly as a trans woman in one of the biggest TV shows in the world, probably the most internationally acclaimed Korean TV show at least, might have been extremely difficult. Might have. We only have the producer's words to go on for this, and I've seen over and over again people exaggerate how hard it is to find trans actors to deflect criticism for their hiring practices in the West, when there are trans actors begging for work in the comments below each video, each article, each post, where they claim we don't exist. But I don't speak Korean, so I don't know. I think they probably could have found one if they tried hard enough. But trans representation in Korea isn't where it needs to be yet. I mean, it's not anywhere. And I much prefer, say, the way Squid Game uses its cis male actor to play a trans woman than the Danish girl. Did I mention I really dislike the Danish girl?
Am I pretty enough? Penis to vagina.
In contrast to any character played by Eddie Redmayne, Hyun-ju in Squid Game is handled pretty well. And by that I mean I probably would have hated it earlier into my transition because it is both too real and warmly sincere. Part of the reason why it works for me is because the point of Squid Game. Hyun-ju, like every participant in the games, is absolutely desperate to the point of being willing to die to get the money she needs. After coming out, she lost her job and her prestigious rank in the military. She lost her friends, her father cut off all contact, and all of this while her medical bills rose and rose, and with it, her debt. Trans healthcare is not covered by the Korean government, just in case you were wondering. Having lost everything in the process of becoming her true self, she wants to go to Thailand to get the surgery she needs,
Penis to vagina.
and to start over in a place that is more accepting. That place is presumably also Thailand, just in case that wasn't clear. One of the reasons I think I would have had much different feelings on this years ago is that despite being played by a cis man, Hyun-ju looks, well, kind of like me, or at least what I looked like for the first few years of my transition. She's taller than not just the other women, but almost everyone around her. She's kind of clocky while still being feminine, and her voice is just, well, her voice. Even from her side profile, I feel a little twinge. I recognize that look. She's played extremely well, she's written well, and she's treated very realistically, with both the good and the bad that comes from that. She's insulted behind her back by one of the other series regulars, an old woman who was in the games with her son, who, despite her overt bigotry, accompanied by the extremely familiar question to any trans person who's ever heard strangers talking, is that a man or a woman? Quickly gets to know Hyun-ju, as the two of them have to rely on each other to survive. It quite effectively shows just how people who are scared or hateful towards trans people can change by, knowing a trans person. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't tear up a little when Hyun-ju's friend calls her beautiful. I've been in those conversations, and it hurts to watch as a viewer who's been there. As someone sincerely calls you beautiful, sees you for what you are, and appreciates it, and you can't make yourself believe it. You choose to believe they're lying to be nice. But I can see her. I've been on both sides of this now, and she is beautiful. But she's played by a cis man. So shouldn't I be more angry about this? Well, maybe, but I'm not, and I'm conflicted about that to this day. After watching the show, I read the responses Squid Game creator Hwang Dong-hyuk gave to TV Guide and Decider about this issue, and, well, I remain conflicted. More informed, but still unsure what to feel. When Decider asked Squid Game creator Hwang Dong-hyuk about the addition of a transgender character in Season 2, he compared the character's purpose to that of Season 1 fan favourite Ali. I saw the people who come to join the games of Squid Game as people who are usually marginalised or neglected from society, and not just financially speaking, Hwang said. In Season 1, the representative character for that was Ali, who is a foreigner working in Korea, which is one of the most representative minority groups in Korea. Today, unfortunately, in Korean society, the gender minority is a group that is not as accepted widely within society, he continued, which is why I created the character of Hyun-ju as a male-to-female transgender woman. While American television is full of prominent transgender performers like Laverne Cox, MJ Rodriguez, and Elliot Page, Hwang admitted to TV Guide's Kat Moon that Squid Game struggled to cast a Korean transgender actress to play Hyun-ju. In the beginning, we were doing our research, and I was thinking of doing an authentic casting of a trans actor, Hwang told TV Guide. When we researched in Korea, there are close to no actors that are openly trans, let alone openly gay, because unfortunately in the Korean society currently, the LGBTQ community is rather still marginalized and more neglected, which is heartbreaking. LGBT rights in South Korea are few compared to those in the US and other countries in the West. South Korea has not legalized same-sex marriage, only 3 places in Asia have, and discrimination against the LGBTQ community is common. In July, the country's Supreme Court ruled that same-sex couples can receive the same health insurance benefits as heterosexual couples, in a move that Amnesty International called a historic victory for equality and human rights in the country. As Hwang explained in Decider, compared to before, it has gotten better, but still, in Korea, when you are a gender minority, it is not as widely accepted yet. Unfortunately, you are still seen to be very much out of the norm. It was near impossible to find someone who we could cast authentically, Hwang continued. And that led us to the decision to cast Sung-hoon. Park is a popular cisgender male actor in Korea who has a history of not shying away from queer roles. I have watched his work ever since his debut, and I have complete trust in him that he'll be the right person in terms of talent and portraying this character, Hwang said to TV Guide. Naturally, the decision to cast a cisgender actor in a transgender role has spurred controversy. Hwang told Decider, though, that he hoped the inclusion of Hyun-ju in Squid Game could pave the way for more mainstream acceptance of transgender people in Korea, which in turn could lead to more prominent out transgender actresses. By creating a character much like Hyun-ju and through her choices, her actions, and the way she carries herself in the game, I hope that I could raise awareness of these issues that we face today, Hwang said. From what I can tell, Hwang's heart is in the right place, and he made a great character. Apparently, trans people were consulted in her creation, and there is hope that in the future this could get better, but could it not have gotten better now? Well, it's complicated. Would I have preferred Hyun-ju be played by a trans woman? Absolutely. Do I understand wanting to get someone pre any medical transition for the storyline? Absolutely, but there are probably actors for that too who are trans, who can play that role better and more authentically than any cis man can. Does a trans woman being played by a cis man come with offensive, even violent implications? Absolutely. Do I believe they really couldn't find a trans woman to play Hyun-ju? Kinda. I mean, I can't know for sure, but I could believe it. I don't find that inherently implausible, though they could almost certainly have looked harder. Was Hyun-ju written, directed, and acted well? Absolutely. She's perfect. I love her. And I still feel conflicted about that. Sometimes these things aren't purely good or bad. They can be both. I'm glad the character of Hyun-ju exists. If she had to be played by a cis man, I'm glad she was played with such warmth and empathy as she was by Park Sung-hoon. It could have been done better, but Korean TV isn't exactly super famous for being forward-thinking in terms of trans representation. This is both good and bad at the same time. I can only ask for so much. Sometimes I won't get it, but we did get the conversation going. The creators of Squid Game responded to it, sincerely, and they clearly wanted this to be a step forward for representation in the community, and to show how trans people are marginalized by Korean society. That's a step forward, even if I might have liked that step to, go a bit further. Despite the connotations, despite its imperfections, I am happy we got this character. And I am happy we were shown as human, as beautiful, as deserving of love and happiness, even if we could not do it ourselves. At the same time, I'm still unhappy with the fact that it was played by a cis man. I hope this paves the way for a future where we can do these things ourselves, where we don't have to be grateful for mishandled casting choices, where we can get past the gatekeepers, where we don't have to contend with the man in a dress trope every time we want our experiences represented. A future where we can just be us. A future with trans characters made for us, by us, and with us. Until that day comes, thanks for watching. Hey, thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. If you like this video, why not like it, leave a comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, and all that good stuff. I am unfortunately quite poor, as always, so if you have a few coins burning a hole in your pocket, and you hate to see the tran like me down on her luck, you could help me get out of my massive horrifying overdraft, and get out the £2,000 hole that I've been in for like a decade. Please send me some money. You can give me one-time donations on Coffee or PayPal, links below as always, or sign up to my Patreon or YouTube memberships, where you get early videos, access to the members-only Discord, my Nintendo Switch friend code, and exclusive content, such as long-form interviews with some of your favourite YouTubers. And in addition to all that good stuff, you'll also get your name read out at the end of each video, just like these lovely people. Carolyn, Imogen Q, Luciano Frias Andrade, Adam, Cerise Infusen 99, Harry, Endog 191, Cav, Quesadilla de Tortilla Azul, Liron, Adam Lees, Danielle Nevels, No Not That Paul, MB, Madeline Aguirre, Ben Murphy, Lex Phoenix, Ender Kurzitz, Mira D, Jade Senior, Boa Ia, James W, Marva and Doll, Thorongil, Bob the Builder 5445554, Deborah Laboon, Vegas, Zilla Lavinium, Vince Whitaker, Amelia Lisette, Jason Haig, Frank McManus, Susan Foster, Helena Real, Sierra Whiskey, Orestria, Ali Katka, John N, Lloyd Luciente, Jason Cribbett, Shield Vaden, Robin Podolsky, Turtle Choom, Casual Observer, Manta Ray, Courtney Burmack, Sleepy Slug, Philippa Tabroga, Soma Piglet, Brain Douche, Artie Wolf, Greg Noble, Deanna McMillan, Caroline Regalado, Alexandra Lilly, Howard Lott, Narania Scarjan, and Joey Cobalt. Thank you so much.